Chicago Marathon 2025. A journey I've come to refer to as my pursuit of imperfection. I started planning to run the Chicago Marathon a year ago in October 2024. I had major FOMO after waiting too long to try and get into the 2024 race and then having to watch from afar as the amazing stories and accomplishments rolled in. I did not want to miss out again. And by the beginning of December, I had my race entry, hotel, and flight all secured and paid in full. Beginnings of a perfect plan. But first, I had to train for the Boston Marathon in April, and that training plan came on the heels of the Dallas Marathon that I had run just 10 days before Christmas. The Boston cycle was not exactly smooth. Among other things, I had bitten off more than I could chew with a training plan I wasn't ready for. Plus, I didn't give myself enough time to recover from Dallas. The end result was an underwhelming performance in Boston, although I did still manage to enjoy it by making a mental switch to my B goal early in the race. I ran the best that I could, but I took the pressure off myself and made a point of having fun. Unfortunately, that happiness was short-lived, as the post-marathon blues soon descended upon me like a thick, sad fog, clouding my ability to see the joy in running for many weeks to come. After training too hard for too long and then running one of the most challenging courses around, my body finally gave out, and my mental disposition soon followed. And while it was a rough patch to go through, it was also a good learning experience. It forced me to reevaluate my approach to race recovery and admit to myself that I had some unrealistic ideas about my own physical and psychological capabilities. So, I gave my mind and body enough time to recuperate, and even though I missed the first 2 weeks of the plan and the Texas summer heat was already starting to bear down, by late June, I felt super excited and ready to jump into the Chicago training cycle. And in a weirdly masochistic way, I was somehow enthusiastic about training in the heat and gaining the physiological benefits I knew that would eventually pay off in the cooler autumn weather. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was quite nerve-wracking. It was all about trusting the process that my slow summer paces would turn into fast autumn paces as long as I stuck to the heart rate based training plan. Despite my anxiety around not knowing exactly what speeds the slow paces would translate into in cooler temperatures, I was highly optimistic that the results were going to be very positive. The body was feeling great, my head was in a good place, and the prospect of having a stellar performance on a flat course in cool weather in Chicago was getting super real. If only I could stay healthy. If only. With mere weeks remaining in the schedule, my left glute reared its ugly head. And I make no apologies for the horrible pun. It was that glute, plus the knock-on effect of the rest of the left side posterior chain, that I'd had to rehabilitate after Boston in the spring. It was tempting to try and push through, and I, somewhat unwisely, spent some time doing a few more workouts to evaluate how serious it was. But eventually, I did the smart thing, and I bailed out of all remaining sessions in the final 2 weeks of the taper. And I just hoped it would be enough. There was no way to know how I would feel on race day. It could truly be anywhere from getting my first ever DNF to having the race of my life, and almost anything in between. The only thing I knew for sure is that I would get to the start line, and the rest was a crapshoot. I arrived in Chicago on a Thursday evening. That gave me 2 days to get my bearings in the city, carb load, get in a shakeout run, pick up my race packet at the expo, and meet my fellow mess haps, plus various other pre-race rituals and activities. On Friday morning, I met up with the Marathon Handbook guys for a short shakeout run. They were super nice, as were the other runners that came out for the shakeout. However, the pace of the run was a bit spicier than I was expecting. Nothing crazy, but my heavy breathing was a surprise and triggered a tiny little panic attack that suddenly had me questioning everything. Fortunately, I somehow pulled it together and convinced myself it was just some nerves from running with a bunch of strangers. Very nice strangers, but strangers nonetheless. Whew, everything was okay. So next up was the expo that afternoon and picking up my race packet. The process was superb and something I think race organizers everywhere could learn from. Extremely simple, quick, with almost no queuing, and in just a few minutes I had all my stuff. But the race packet was before you get inside the expo. And inside the expo was a different story. Not because of bad organization, but because of the crowds. They were massive. It seemed like there were queues just to queue for some other queues. I generally don't do well in crowds, so I just had to calm my mind and focus on not letting my anxiety get the better of me. That said, after waiting in three separate queues just to buy the Shocks headphones that were on sale, it was just too much. So I grabbed my race t shirt and then I fled without buying any of the race merch, of which I wanted, but it was just not worth it. It was all about keeping the mental and physical tension as low as possible and not allowing it to accumulate. After escaping the expo, it was time to go back to the hotel and finish the carb load for the day and just relax. My niece, Jory Lynn, who is traveling from northern Alberta in Canada to come and support me, she would arrive later that evening, and I was really excited to see her. It would be the first time anyone in my family has been able to attend a race, and it just meant so much to me. Thankfully, she landed in time to get checked into her hotel and then meet me for dinner before I turned into a pumpkin for my 8 p.m. bedtime. It was brief, but a lovely catch up, and we made our plan for Saturday, which centered around meeting up with the rest of the Meshap team for lunch and a group photo. So then the next day, when we arrived at the meetup, several team members were already there, saving a spot in the restaurant for the rest of us. And then everybody else trickled in over the next 45 minutes or so. What an incredible experience and truly an honor to get to meet these Brock stars face to face. There was Tony, Raphael, Hannah, James, Christian, Tate, Christy, Kelly, Rowan, Christine, and Carolyn, plus family and friends. It was great. After many months of supporting each other via technology from a distance, it's a whole other level getting to see and talk to the real people. Nothing compares to being able to shake hands and sit across the table exchanging war stories in person. And then the level of kindness and respect of the entire team was on full display when one of our teammates fell ill. After a sudden and unexpected onset of a migraine, the contents of this person's stomach decided to join the party on the outside very suddenly. It was uncontrollable and unavoidable, which everyone at the table immediately recognized. The only concerns expressed were for this person's well being, and not a single negative reaction or aversion to what happened was evident. It was truly impressive to see the entire group comport themselves with that level of class. All I can say is bravo. After the excitement of meeting the team, I of course had to ridiculously finish getting my 20,000 steps in for the day, and then back to the hotel to finish my second day of carb loading, do my flat lay, and then get my feet up and pray for a good sleep. The sleep was pretty decent, and my prep on Sunday morning was uneventful. Overall, the weather conditions were good. They were calling for cool temps early and then a slight warm up later in the morning. And then it was just a short walk from the hotel to the hospitality tent where I had plenty of time to get multiple toilet stops and then a full warm up. I only wish I had paid closer attention or taken some notes of Ben and Mary's advice to not trust the hosts from the hospitality tent to walk me to the corral on time. That mistake resulted in me not getting inside the corral before the supposed cutoff time, but I just decided to not let that stress me out. It meant I wouldn't be able to link up with the 325 pace group, but there's nothing I could do about it, so why worry? And besides, I have a lot of confidence in my own pacing abilities, anyways. By the time I got to the start line, I estimated the 325 group was probably 2 minutes ahead of me. I chose 325 as my initial pace because it was midway between my A goal of sub 320 and my B goal of sub 330. My logic being that if it felt too hard, I could always slow it down for plan B, or if it felt great, I could speed it up later for plan A. Then the first 5K clocked in at 24:23, which I knew was pretty close to plan. And since I felt quite comfortable, I decided to see if I could maybe incrementally just speed up as I went along. Sort of like a progressive run, but with 5K increments. So in the second 5K, 24:22. Okay, 1 second faster. At least I didn't slow down. Third 5K, 24:01. Okay, that's better. But during that 5K, I got a crazy little surprise. In my open ear headphones, the only sounds I normally hear are the announcements from my watch for pace and heart rate. Suddenly, I could hear a phone ringing on the far end, and then a voice: 911, what's your emergency? I was mortified and ready to burst out laughing at the same time. I just pocket dialed emergency services while running a marathon. I apologized and explained what happened, and she says, "So you don't need an ambulance then?" Um, Not yet. Hilarious. Okay, back to the race. Fourth 5K, 23:57. And then I hit the half at 1 hour, 42 minutes, and 1 second. Good and good. Fifth 5K, 23:39. Now we're getting somewhere. But then signs of trouble. Sixth 5K, 23:43. Not bad, but I was going in the wrong direction now, and I was starting to really feel the heat. But at this point, I was very confident that I had the B goal in the bag, and just as confident that I was too far away from the A goal to have a chance. I eventually caught the 325 pace group with around 10K left. So at that point, I knew that if I could just stay in front of them, I would be in the neighborhood of a 323. Seventh 5K, 23:55. At this point, I am deep in the pain cave, reciting all the mantras I could think of. Eighth 5K, 24:08. The pace group caught up to me and passed me. I dug deep, as deep as I could, to overtake them one last time. Final 2.2K, 10:46. I gave everything I had, gritted my teeth, up the small hill that felt like a mountain, and reached out to drag the finish line back towards me. Finally, I crossed the finish line with the tank completely empty. 3:22:54 with a negative split. And yes, still ahead of the pace group. It wasn't my fastest time, even though it was the flattest and fastest course that I've ever run. The weather conditions were great, but not necessarily ideal. The race organizers, they did a fabulous job, but with 54,000 plus people, it's pretty hard to get absolutely everything to go smoothly for everyone. My training, it went mostly well, but it came with a pretty bumpy landing. I had anxious moments while traveling, a manic expo, nervousness meeting new people, and the stress, the mass of humanity in the start corrals. None of these are descriptions of optimal situations. Yet, somehow, even with all these myriad imperfections, it all added up to a perfect experience. Seeking absolute perfection is pointless because it's impossible. But if you accept the imperfections as inevitable and you learn from them and even appreciate them, you may just find that what emerges is actual perfection.